This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 97.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I'm here with my co-host extraordinaire, Benny Kanungo, which I will never get tired from saying his last name. How's it going, Benny?
It's going well, thank you, Randy. How are you?
I'm good. You're in your favorite meeting room at work, so thank you for joining. We have an amazing interview today, at least in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. And, we're supposed to be doing an intro, so we're not supposed to be talking about what happened, but it's a very good interview. It is a first, and we'll talk about that in the interview itself. But we have the first female SE leader on the show. I've had a hard time actually grabbing female SEs for some reason, but now I have two in a row. I've had other women on the show, but they weren't SEs or SE leaders. And one in sales enablement, SE enablement, and the other one was just a sales trainer. So Benny's just standing there silent because I'm hogging all the limelight. So how about we just jump into the show?
Sounds good to me. Enjoy, everybody.
All right, he's here. All right, let's jump into the show. Good afternoon, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing excellent. So we're all here together, you, me, and Benny. And Benny's on the bottom of our screen, at least on my Zoom. So can you introduce yourself to the folks listening?
Sure. My name is Liz Whitaker-Freitas. And I know that's a mouthful, but I'm an SE manager at Splunk.
Nice. That was like a very SE way of introducing ourselves. That was awesome. So, all right, you're an SE manager at Splunk. Have you always been an SE manager at Splunk?
No, I've been an SE manager for the past 2 years at Splunk. Prior to that, I was an SE at Splunk as well, and going back before that, I was an SE for 4 years at another company, but my background is quite varied. So I worked in different industries and had different roles, and kind of happened upon the role of an SE.
So you were mentioning earlier before we started recording that you were approached for an SE role and you didn't know what an SE role was. How did you make the decision? Like, it's not an easy decision to make to move careers, even if you know what the job is. How did you make that decision to switch to an SE role without knowing what that is?
Right. It was a hard decision to make. Someone that I had been working with as a vendor approached me sometime after we didn't have any more dealings with him. And he said, "Hey, I want you to come work for me as an SE." And like I told you before, I was like, "What is that? I don't even know what you're talking about." So, he started explaining what the role entailed. And at the time, I was working in business intelligence and so business analytics. And I worked with customers, internal customers, the company I worked for, trying to figure out what someone's problem was and define what kind of information would be needed to solve their problem. So in that exercise, I would often have to present to them different solutions and say, well, rather than telling someone, okay, yes, I can give you a report with all these columns on here, I would always ask, what is it that you're trying to solve, right? So when he explained to me what a SE position is tasked with doing, I kind of made the connection that I kind of been doing that job already in my job. So it didn't seem like so much of a stretch to go somewhere where I understood the technology and I was going in and helping customers see how it could solve their problem. So, the decision to move over was still a risky decision because I wasn't actually actively looking for that. But it was a good opportunity. It gave me more flexibility in that, you could travel. You don't have to go to an office every day. You don't have to be there for 9 to 5. And it has worked out well for me so far. So going on 10 years now, so it has been a good ride.
I'm looking at Benny. He has to go to the office every day. Or at least he enjoys going to the office every day.
It's not wrong. I do, actually. I do have a quick question, actually, to maybe follow up on that one, mostly maybe to the benefit of our listeners. So having been an SD for so long and now a manager, but then coming from a business analytics, a business intelligence world, what was your background? What background did you have before you ended up coming into the SD world?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I probably have like the strangest story. I didn't go to school for computer science. I was a psychology major, and I got my MBA right after I finished college. And my concentration was actually human resource management. And my first job out of college was I was actually filling in for an HR administrator that was out on maternity leave. I had no idea what I was doing. And they rapidly discovered that I didn't know the first thing about running an office. That company had just finished acquiring a larger company, and they literally had to figure out how to get those people on their payroll system, on their HR system, and get paid and get benefits and things like that. And, this is dating me a little bit, but they did look at me and say, hey, you know computers, don't you? You do this. So that started my path down database, ERP systems, and that eventually led to finding a niche in business intelligence and analytics.
I wanted to go back to your previous answer when you said that you were actually asking people what are you trying to solve. Did the SE who offered you the job, did he see that, or how did he know that you'd be good at it?
Yeah, so it has to do with the timing that this all happened. Where I was working, we were evaluating his product. He had a product that I wanted my company to purchase to solve the problem that we had. And I worked with them. I was essentially the champion internally. And I worked with them to help deliver the pitch to our whoever was our executive buyer. And I did a lot of the education internally for why we needed this product and what it would offer us, right? So he was able to see that. And I think that's, what he thought of when he called me out of the blue and said, hey, come work with us. So.
Nice. And 6 years later, you became a manager. Was it 6 years or more?
4, 3, 7.
7 years. Yeah. Okay. So you became a manager. Now, I've talked to some SEs who don't want to become managers and are thrust into that position, and some SEs who want it and fight for it. Which one were you?
I think I liked the idea. I was ready for a new challenge, right? I had been an SE for about 7 years. And I had, I've been a successful SE. I met a lot of the benchmarks that I had set for myself, and I wanted to do something different. So it was something that I looked forward to doing.
Was there anything that while you were an SE, just working again as a regular SE, did you kind of have that in mind to become a manager as you were in that role, or did you only have that aspiration once you kind of met all the goals and reached where you wanted to be as a regular SE?
I hadn't really thought about it, but at the time, the manager that I had, he has told me since then that he had identified, qualities in me that he thought would make me a good manager. So without my knowing, he was actually sort of grooming me and giving me tasks that to kind of test me out, like, oh, how are you going to do with this? Like he would ask me to help him with recruiting. So I did a lot of recruiting. I also mentored a lot of SEs that came on board that after we hired them. Whenever he went out on holiday, he would say, "You're the one that everyone needs to call when something goes wrong, and only call me if you can't figure it out." So he unknowingly was preparing me for that.
What about from your perspective? Oh, sorry, go ahead there, Ramsey.
Sorry. What was the quality that he identified in you that made him think you'd be a great SE manager?
Gosh, I should get him on the phone and ask him. I think, gosh, that's a good question. I just, he knew that I had experience with recruiting and those sort of things. So like the typical operational things of being a manager, I could easily check those off. But the qualities, I don't know it. If he saw me, I'll have to go back and ask him.
Okay. Well, yeah, like I know I'd be interested to know. I don't know if you care or not, but I would be interested to know.
Well, on the flip side, though, so as an SE manager now, what are the qualities that you're looking for when you, like, imagine if you were to put yourself in his position, if you were to come across somebody that maybe fit that ideal role, like, what did that look like, or what type of qualities are you looking for there?
What qualities am I looking for in an SE or an SE manager?
Let's do both, actually, with the perspectives that you have. It'd be kind of interesting to see both.
Right. Well, SE, there's several things. Like the way I look for SEs to add onto my team, I first look at what does the team lack, right? There's got to be something on the team that the team is lacking, and whatever that thing is I always look for a candidate that can kind of fill that void. That's the first thing. The second thing I look for, the fit. Are they going to fit with the team? Because I don't want a major disruption in how we work together. And one thing I always tell candidates when I'm interviewing with them, if you don't want to keep learning, if you don't like learning, then you should just drop out right now, because especially where the industry that we're in, it's growing so rapidly, you always have to be learning. And you also have to always be willing to not only be able to say, I don't know the answer, but I can find the answer for you, right? So as much as you have to be an expert, you also have to accept that you're not going to know everything. So there's different things that people have to have. And then I also look for people who are coachable. If they're not coachable, then you're going to run into some problems at some point, because we all have things that we can improve on, and I want folks on the team that are willing to accept feedback and give feedback.
But I am perfect. Why do I need to be coachable?
No, that's excellent advice. That makes sense. Thank you.
If you were to groom an SE to take your place, what are the qualities you're looking for? I think that's a follow-up to Benny's question.
Right. So there's certain things, like some of the stuff I kind of knew coming into the job, but I think some of the things I didn't know are some of the things that I'd be looking for in qualities for someone. And that's the fact that, like, especially if someone's coming from an SC position into a leadership position, right? Because it's a different shift in how you have to think. So it would have to be someone who can handle lots of different things at once, right? Because it's not about you anymore, it's about your team. So your problems, forget about them. You need to be able to help manage and guide all the people that are working with you. So is someone that can be patient, can listen, can take an interest in the person that on their team, both professionally and personally, so that they can always work with the person to develop them and grow them.
That makes sense. That's actually really cool that you mentioned, well, that whole idea of being able to just work with different people and different challenges that they're working with from the manager perspective, but also just looking for an SE in general to be very coachable and also to be able to fit that void within an organization, but particularly to get to get along well with everybody already in that organization. It ties in very well with some past guests that we've had that put a very heavy emphasis on the human side of sales engineering and the human side of sales, which is something that might not come as naturally to some. And so really re-emphasize this idea of, you may be a technical expert and you may know your solution or whatever it is very well, but there's a whole other side of it that you really need to hone as well. And the importance of being, I sound so bad, but to be more human about it all is super important for this role of sales engineering. So thank you for that. That was really good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly, and my team would tell you that that's the first thing, in terms of the customer and SE is the first thing is they're human and they're people, and you're trying to solve a problem, and the best way to connect is to have that human connection.
So you mentioned that as an SE leader, you have to forget about your problems and then focus on everybody else. But what does happen to your problems? If you're having problems, how does that get solved? Because otherwise, if they keep accumulating, I don't know what you would do with that.
Well, you have to work on them, right? You still have to work on addressing them. And, I would work with my manager to help me solve whatever my problems are, right? But I'm not bringing them to my team, right? My job is to be there to support them, to remove obstacles out of their way, and to help them be successful, right? So it's just a shift in how you're thinking and how you present yourself to them.
Nice.
Do you ever miss it? Do you ever, after having been a sales engineer for so long, do you have to stop yourself from, putting on your SE hat as a manager?
I do sometimes. That was more difficult at the very beginning. And that took some learning. That was kind of like not honeymoon phase, but after the honeymoon phase, the hard phase of learning how to let go of some of the things and to coach someone rather than trying to do it yourself. I do miss some of that customer connection that I had because I was very involved with the customers. Now the relationship is a little bit more distant, but that's okay.
So if there's an SE looking to become an SE manager, what warning would you give them? What are the things that we don't see as SEs that you guys do and we're oblivious to?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
That's nice.
No. Well, some of the things that we do that you don't know about, well, it's not that you don't know about, but there's lots of things happening behind the scenes, right? So understanding the business, trying to plan for future growth, recruiting, even though you may not have an open rec, you want to kind of keep an open pipeline of candidates, things like that. But the things that were really different were, I've already kind of alluded to this, but if you're going into that position, you have to realize that it's no longer all about you, right? You might have been a star SE, always in the limelight. You're no longer going to be in the limelight. It is about your team and about supporting them and having them be successful. And they basically own all the wins and you own all the losses, right? The losses are on you. So I think you have to be aware and willing to take that.
Yeah, you just described like basketball coaches where, you're sitting back. If the team wins, it's all because the players are amazing. If the team loses, it's because you're a bad coach.
Yeah, I used to be a coach. In college, I thought I had wanted to be a rower. I was on the crew team, and I'm sitting down now, but if I stood up, you wouldn't notice. Vertically challenged. So I found out very quickly that my job was better. I would be better serving the team if I wasn't in the boat with dead weight. So I stepped out of the boat and became a coach. So I take a lot of my management approaches from that experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, did that help you in your SE management role? The fact that you're able to recognize that you might serve the team better just by being a coach is just like, it's very self-aware, which I find it as a great quality, another great quality that SEs should have.
Yes, definitely.
So
yeah, with that self-awareness, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to quickly say, with that self-awareness, I don't know I don't really know how to put it into words well, but that takes some courage, I think, to recognize something that you really want to do well at, and then recognize that maybe I'd be better served somewhere else. That was really cool to hear. Sorry.
But even still, like, you were like, based on the information that you just provided, you were a very great, like, you achieved all your benchmarks that you set for you. So you were a successful SE, and you're still a successful like SE manager. It doesn't have to be, well, at least I think so, based on this little information that I know you may be too humble to admit it, but that's what I've seen from you. So I did want to ask, what are the benchmarks that you set for yourself, if you can remember them?
Well, coming into Splunk and this company, I really had to really sell myself, because when they were hiring, they were looking for really technical people, right? They were looking for people who were SEs, had been SEs for a long time, that they were from Oracle, NetApp, or what have you. I didn't come from that background. So I felt like I had a lot to prove, right? And so I had to pass all the benchmarks, do all the certifications that we had, do them as quickly as I could, and not always be, not find myself in the last list that had to get, the reminders to do it. I had to be in the front of the list. That's how I felt I had to be successful. And then I had to really understand what my customers were and what their challenges were, and feel like I could articulate the solution to them that would really help them, and see them, along the maturity curve that we like to see our customers grow. So luckily I was able to do that. I had good support from the people around me, and I had, we had some good wins in terms of the customers that are really notable and referenceable customers, make that progress along the maturity curve. So
if I understand you correctly, you decided to outwork everybody.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's usually in common with successful people. So yeah, and I just said that you're a successful SE manager. You kind of reacted in such a way, like, if whoever's watching the video may see it, you reacted in such a way that maybe you don't believe me. However, like, I talked to at least one SE on your team, and he mentioned that everybody's fiercely loyal to you, which implies to me that you're a successful SE manager. The question is, why are they so fiercely loyal to you?
Well, the SE is going to be piled underneath RFPs all quarter long. So all your RFPs are coming to you. Gosh, fiercely loyal. I think, if they feel fiercely loyal, then I guess I've done a good job, because what I try to do is always have SEs back, right? I've said it before, their people first. Their family comes, their family and people come first, their health comes second, and work comes third. So I strongly believe that, and I support them in that. And then when it comes to work on my team, what I do is, everybody has their own kryptonite, and they have their own thing that they're really good at. And in the industry that we work at, it's changing so quickly that you can't be the expert at everything. So I try to build the team as a community, even though SEs are out individually on their own. Sometimes it can feel like they're on an island and by themselves. But with our team, I try to bring them together and leverage their kryptonite, whatever they're really good at, to feed them and to help others on the team. So we have a pretty tight-knit team, and where we feel that when you have a question, you can just call someone up. You get backup. We all have each other's back, and then they all feel like they can be successful. So
that makes sense.
Very cool.
Go ahead, Benny. I need to formulate my thoughts.
So to that point around, always having each other's back and kind of having that structure in place where you're all kind of a family. Obviously, you've made quite a name for yourself as an SE organization, or just by virtue of that, you'd make a name for yourself, or as an organization, as the SE organization within Splunk. Do you ever get pushback, or is there ever any pushback that you receive from other departments due to you maybe having your team's back? Do you ever face any challenges from other leadership over at Splunk?
I don't think so. Splunk is has a pretty open culture, and it was a little bit of a new approach to some sales managers or RSDs who were used to just having one SE who traveled with them to everything, and it was always just that one person. So adapting to the way we operate sometimes, or it could have come as a little bit of a challenge for some people, but when they would see the results that they'd get, I think it changed some minds, because they could feel confident that even though the SE didn't know everything, they had people that they could call, that they could bring with them, or dial in on the call, or seek out for assistance. And having that, they got to know the broader team. So they would say, hey, why don't you call up so-and-so and bring them along for this call. So I think it's pretty well received.
Fair. I guess they all get caught up in the new wave, but when they see something working a certain way, you just have to adapt with it. And it seems like that's a pretty recurring theme across Splunk, because everybody's very adaptive and very accommodating as well. So that's good to hear.
By the way, this episode is not sponsored by Splunk, but we really like it.
I will say very quickly that every time I hear Splunk, it always brings me back to the first time I ever visited San Jose. I was in that place where you guys have that giant building. I forget the name of it, Santa something or another, that really cool little area. Anyways, and I remember seeing this beautiful building for this company called Splunk. I had no idea what Splunk was. It was a sound, if anything. And anyways, it blew me away. Pretty cool impression. I looked it up and obviously was very impressed. But Splunk and me always had that impression of that super cool random tech company in the middle of the fanciest place in San Jose.
Yeah.
So it is San Jose. You remember that it is San Jose.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned that family first, at least that's your philosophy. A lot of organizations I've seen say family first, but then when push comes to shove, it's business first. So how do you kind of manage, because that's part of the things that SEs won't see, an SE manager trying to defend or filter stuff out from the SE's perspective, well, to give them the autonomy, to give them the ability to be first versus the business. How do you manage that?
I think by the nature of the way that we are a team, and we're not just individual SEs on our own, and that if someone's got something that's come up on personal business or in their life, we can jump in and cover for them. I just thought of one of the people on my team when I was recruiting this person. I remember they were going through through the interview process, the person had some medical things that they were dealing with, and they were feeling anxiety from or pressure from where they were working. And, I basically said, well, if you come to Splunk, like, I have a team of people that will support you, right? If
Right.
something happens, it doesn't matter. You have to take care of yourself, and we want you to be the best person that you can be when you're here. But if you have to go take care of something else, we can cover.
Nice. It's always good to hear, like, when because we're talking about fierce loyalty to you. I had a manager a couple jobs back where I was fiercely loyal to him, but I didn't feel any loyalty beyond that to the company, mainly because I didn't feel that, like, I felt like he was doing all the work to make sure that I'm supported and the company wasn't. So it's good to hear when, like, the company in itself is there to support the SE. Loyalty will be towards the company as a whole, not just individual people's. Because as soon as he left, I kind of left too. Like, I checked out as soon as he left, and I followed suit right after.
So I would have a question. What
Sure.
made you fiercely loyal to him?
I felt like he cared more than anything else. Like, a simple thing. We were talking. I'm like, yeah, you haven't checked in a while. Like, we haven't talked in a while. Every few months, he used to come up every 4 months to Canada. He was in Raleigh, and he'd come up every 4 months. And I tell him, like, hey, like, we're not seeing each other. It's like, oh, you want to see me more? Okay. So for a year, he just started coming up every 3 months. Like that, it's a big thing. Like, he's leaving his family to come and see me. I knew he was sacrificing just to make me feel better. And, like, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to seem needy to him.
Yeah.
Right? But when we it was through the course of a conversation that it came up, and he made a mental note. He didn't make anything up, but I noticed that about him. Like, now I'm seeing him more often. He's making me feel better about the way I'm doing things. He's helping me with my salesperson a little bit better. Like, it's just, again, little things. It wasn't anything major. I didn't have any major problems that he needs to deal with. It's just reaching out every once in a while made me feel better, and we became friends. So that's why I was fiercely loyal to him.
Yeah.
So I wanted to change subject. Benny, did you have a question before we change subjects? No.
No, not at all. I feel like I should have added something there, but no, everything y'all mentioned about just being loyal and the qualities that might make somebody loyal to someone. I think, Rams, you hit it on the head. Just to know that your manager cares means so much. I mean, I've been fortunate in my short career to have had managers that care quite a lot, that seem to go the extra mile, or really, even if they don't go the extra mile, just the fact that they care is almost that extra mile in and of itself. So, yeah, I guess for any budding SCs out there, I mean, yeah, again, the human side, we never we always emphasize the human side of this. It's important that you feel comfortable with your manager, and obviously for any managers out there, make your team feel comfortable with you, and you might, if you're not already experiencing success, it'll go a long way.
I do want to point something out, that it goes both ways. So I was there whenever he needed me. Like, if there's an extra task that he wanted to be done, I would be the first one to volunteer, even if I didn't know how the expertise, even if I had to qualify to have somebody else help me. But, like, you need help, I'm there. Just ask. So it was a two-way street, and a lot of people on that team were that way. And I think it's because he was that SE leader, the manager. He was helpful to everybody, so everybody wanted to help him. So it was a race to who's going to help him first.
That's right.
And so all right, we're going to move subjects now. What was that?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say the golden rule prevails: treat others the way you want to be treated, and it tends to pay off.
It's simple.
Yeah. So you work in a department, or not a department. Your customers are called SLED.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only had an interview with one person who's mentioned that title before. So for those who don't know what SLED means, could you just explain that to the listeners?
Sure. We basically verticalize, and SLED stands for state and local and education. So our customers are state and local municipalities, governments, and such, and then higher ed and K through 12 university and schools.
Yeah. So I've never worked with SLED. I've worked with federal governments. I've worked with private companies. Why did you have to verticalize? I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah.
That area of customers?
Basically, because they have different buying cycles, different budgetary cycles, and different needs. Both of these industries tend to be a little bit behind corporate in terms of where they are in terms of technology, and then their funding is going to depend on how much money the government gets or allocates to the department, and they don't have as much flexibility as, say, a corporate entity where they decide that they need the software and they can just go take money from there. They actually have to budget it and go through different buying avenues to go on it.
So would there be a different set of skills for SEs, or is it the same skills, just the sales cycle is longer?
Yes, just the sales cycle is longer. Perhaps the skills would be a little bit more patience,
Okay.
because
How about?
yes, you have to build longer standing relationships with the customer, right? There's a lot of training and hand-holding, a little bit of hand-holding, but definitely it's a slower cycle than everywhere else, I think.
Did you pick that? Sorry, I'll get back to you.
No, go ahead.
Did you pick that vertical, or like did it just happen to be?
Yeah, well, because of where I was when I became an SE, I had worked for a higher ed institution, so
Okay.
I had lots of experience with that, and it just seemed like a good fit for my experience.
So you knew your customers, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. Benny, sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I just have a quick question coming from a place of naivety, I suppose. There's very much a stereotype, I suppose, with just the public sector being maybe a little bit slower paced. Is it typically due to the bureaucracy that tends to cause longer sales cycle in the SL part of SLED, or in the municipality and just in the public sector when you're working with those types of companies or organizations, rather?
I think it comes down to some bureaucracy, and just the way they do their budget cycles, and also there's a lot. I found that there's a lot of shifting, especially in like the major city like New York City, where someone might work in an agency, but then they work in another agency. So there's a lot of shifting of people. So sometimes you might be mid-cycle and all of a sudden your champion's gone to another agency, which might be good because then you've got a head start over there, but you've got to make up some the gap where they might have left from where you were currently working in the opportunity.
It would suck if he goes to a different vertical, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you got nothing. All right, so we're ready to move to the not so fire round. Are you ready for the not so fire round?
I'm ready.
All right. Benny, do you want to take the first question? I don't know why I said it like that this time around.
It's Friday. It's Valentine's Day. I don't know.
Oh yeah, happy Valentine's Day, by the way.
That's right. I am just putting up, or I feel like I'm just going to pull up those questions right now.
All right, how about I'll take the first one, you take the next two.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what is the one thing you love about being an SE manager?
My team and the people I work with.
I think that's why you have fierce loyalty.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, no, it's I could be anywhere at any I could be working at any company right now, but the people that I'm surrounded with are just really bright, and this is the first job where I haven't hit that place of, oh, I don't want to get up in the morning, I don't want to go to work today. I have never had that experience at Splunk. This is not a sales pitch for Splunk, but I've never had that experience with the people that I'm working with. So
it's funny. Almost everybody I talk to who's been at Splunk for more than 3 years or 2 years says that. So it's good to hear.
Sure.
Are
Maybe
you
we
ready,
should
Benny?
get Splunk to stop this. Just kidding. Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, that's a great response. That leads pretty well into the next question, which I'm very curious to hear about. So, given everything is pretty great, what is one thing that you'd change about your job if you could?
what would I change? I should have thought of it. I didn't even notice that. Do you ask the same questions every time? I've listened to tons of podcasts.
Yeah.
And, I've not noticed that. One thing that I would change, now that we're I would change the way that we do onboarding for SEs and sales reps. Because a colleague today, this week, actually, a sales rep said in our QBR, she said something that like really struck me. Like, it dawned on her that SEs and sales reps have different brains, right? So they have different brains. We work differently. We think differently, and when we're trained or brought on board or go through any SE training, it's very rare that we get to understand what they go through and the things that they think about, as well as, for the account managers to know what does it take for an SE to prepare for a demo, right? Like, there's still that perception of, oh, you've got it in your back pocket. Can't you just whip it out, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I would change is to kind of have a little bit more cross-training and break down some of the barriers.
Yeah. I've told this story before on the podcast, but my account manager scheduled a demo for me within like a couple of days with zero discovery. And I knew the customer, so I reached out to the customer directly. And I said, hey, can I do a discovery with you? And I showed up on site, and he wanted to do an interop between our product and their product. So we just decided to play around with it a little bit just to see. It's not a demo yet. It's a champion of mine. I became friends with that person because I don't have that many accounts. It's the same people over and over. And their product did not work at all. It was like a new product. So it didn't have all the features. It didn't work. So if I had shown up for the demo with a greater team and nothing would have worked, it would have been, well, it wouldn't have been my fault because the product didn't work, but it would have been my fault because I didn't prepare for it. Anyways, I took like 2 hours that afternoon to prepare a demo just within my environment, showed up the next day and did the demo, walked out with the account manager, who was, by the way, writing emails in the front of the conference room the entire time. And he said, can you have done that like yesterday? It's just a few clicks.
Right.
There's more to it than that. So,
yeah.
And even with that, I took 2 hours to prepare a demo. I thought that was I was impressed with myself. Turns out not everybody was. Benny, you want to take the question number 3?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, even just wanting to point to that, I always forget what the actual term is, but I remember reading about something in school where they talk about this wedge in communication, where there's this expectation that some people have maybe about you, and then or about your actions and what things take, and then there's the reality of it, and then there's this kind of this gap in between with respect to them setting these expectations that you're never able to achieve, or that you're not able to achieve easily. And if nobody ever addresses that gap in communication, it just gets worse and worse. And so, it's good that to be able to change the onboarding and from the get-go set that expectation that, hey, we're all wired a little bit differently. Why don't you maybe step a mile in my shoes and I'll do the same in yours, and maybe you really gain that appreciation for how we all work. And I think everybody is a lot better off for that. So no, that's a great point. And a really unfortunate situation you're in there, Nancy.
It's just the life of SE and account managers. We have different brains, and
lucky for me, I only had one account manager to work with, so I had a good relationship with him, and I was able to tell him, next time you do it in 2 days, in 1 day, right? So like that, we talked a lot. So if you're talking about that, the gap between the expectation versus reality, we were always in constant check. So we had a good relationship in terms of that. But like I had some expectations of him that might not have been realistic either. So
fair enough. No, that makes sense. That's a good point. So the next question for the Not So Fire round is, what are some great books or resources that you would recommend any SEs or either current or future SEs, or even current or future SE managers? What would you recommend they dive into and read?
Well, there's lots of books, out there, and they've been mentioned on many of the podcasts. The typical, like the John Kerr book, how to how to demo, things like that. Those are all good. I think that, again, from what we've been talking about, that SEs should look for courses on LinkedIn or something like that, where they can learn a little bit about the sales perspective, right, of the day in the life of a sales rep. And from an account manager or from a SE manager perspective, the same thing. Like I made it one of my goals this year to take the onboarding training that we provide to sales reps and RSDs, so regional sales directors, so that I have a better understanding of what they go through and what they do. So basically, doing that, that will go a long way in helping, bridge that gap and build your knowledge of what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that has not been said on this podcast before, so that is a first. Thank
Awesome.
you for that information.
Many firsts.
Many firsts today. Oh yeah, you're the first. How do you want to describe this? You're the first female SE manager or SE on this show.
That is correct, I think.
And
wow!
Benny's mouth
cool.
just dropped.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's very cool. Hey, congratulations.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming on. We still have one more question, or two questions. Question number 4 of the not so fire round is: what separates great SEs from the good ones or the not so good ones? Great versus everybody else.
The great SEs can actually not only listen but hear, right? They can listen to what the customers are saying, and they can hear what the actual problem is. That I think is really the difference between a good SE to a great SE. Because if you can actually hear what the problem is, whether or not they're really articulating it, then your job just becomes that much easier. You can knock it out of the park. You can know exactly what to demo just to meet what they're looking for.
That is perfect. So my last question is, if people want to know more about you, where can they reach out to you or connect with you?
Well, they can look me up on LinkedIn, or they can drop me an email at liz@splunk.com.
Wow.
Nice.
That must have been a coveted email address right there.
It was much better than Whitaker-Freitas at Splunk.
So you sure you want to share your email? That's right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Liz. This was amazing. Many firsts, and not just first for the sake of first. It was great content to boot. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you.
All right, SE Nation. That was the end of our conversation with Liz Whitaker-Freitas. I said it right. And man, that was an awesome conversation. So the reason I really wanted her on the show, other than that she would be the first female SE leader on the show, or even SE, is because one of her guys told me that everybody on her team is fiercely loyal. And when we asked her, part of the not so fire round, why, not why, like what is it that you love about your job or your role? And she's like, my team. It's kind of coming like from a serve first perspective. Like, I love these guys. I will do whatever it takes for them. Like, if you love all right. If you're reporting to a salesperson or an SE director or a sales director, their main concern, rightfully so, is the business, which is why I personally don't think SEs should be reporting to salespeople, because we think differently, like Liz was just saying. So that's why we need SE managers. And I feel like my SE manager from the previous company was like that as well. Like my current manager, my current manager, he loves his guys, but his main focus is the business. I don't know. What did you feel about that?
I think you hit it right on the head there again. So actually a VP here at Ascent once told me this idea of there being a very healthy tension, or it's very common across organizations to have a very healthy tension between, say, the product team and the sales team. And oftentimes sales engineers are almost that intermediary between, say, the product side and the sales side of an organization. And so if, say, you're reporting to a salesperson, like you said, rightfully so, their priority is to make sure you're bringing in business, make sure that you're doing whatever it takes maybe to get that PO across the table. Whereas somebody on maybe the product side or the customer success side or any other side of the organization that needs to, in the end, deliver on these promises that sales is making might not be as enthusiastic to promise the world. And so yeah, making sure that your priorities as an SE are in alignment with those that you're serving and those you're working with makes sense. And if you're only serving, say, a salesperson and you're reporting to a salesperson, you could end up being subject to maybe not the best situation if you're the ones creating tougher situations for others in the organization.
I don't want to say this, but like one of my colleagues had some health issues, and the manager, the sales director, like let him just take days off willy-nilly. Like it's not like they don't care about the human being, but on a day-to-day kind of environment, their focus is work. And whereas SE managers, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I feel like SE managers care more about their sales engineers. Like it's not just about the business. There is a business that you need to do. If you're not doing your job, you're going to be like, go. But if the SEs, like, they care. I don't know. It's just, that's.
No, I think I think you're onto something there. I mean, I'm not an SE manager, so I don't know. But I mean, in different organizations too, I'm not sure what types of metrics the SE manager is being measured on. Are they being measured on the quota of, say, business being brought in, or perhaps their sales team or their sales engineering team's ability to help support that type of number coming in? And so I guess I was just thinking about it as you're saying it. I would say a sales manager versus a sales engineering manager, maybe they both have the same quota or the same idea of having a quota associated to them. The sales manager, though, is obviously more closely on the front lines of ensuring that that number is coming in because his neck's on the line or her neck's on the line in that regard. Whereas the sales engineering manager, their main responsibility is to make sure their team is empowered to support sales to be the best they can be and to get that money in. And so perhaps because of that, the sales engineering manager has more skin in the game to support the people side, to support their people to feel comfortable to do really well and to support the sales team. Whereas the sales manager, while in a way, I mean, they need to rely on the people too to bring that money in. I think it's just more direct, where their direct report is bringing in the money, so they care about bringing in the money. Whereas the sales engineering manager, direct report is supporting the salesperson to bring in money, and so it's really important that person could support that person as best they can, and so that extra can be there.
Yeah, like I think you just nailed it. Again, just about this conversation with Liz, I don't know. What did you feel about it? Like I've gushed enough. So what do you feel about it?
I thought it was great. I think it was really cool to hear somebody from that perspective of being an SE leader and to talk about what she's looking for in team members, and to even talk about her own route and how she fell into the role of being an SE and an SE manager. I think is great, and it's also, I think, very cool for a lot of the listeners, or will be very cool for a lot of the listeners, because she had such an interesting start. Came out of school as a psych major with a concentration in human resource management, and then from there kind of moved into being an SE and then an SE leader, which maybe makes sense. I mean, a lot of people, actually I have a couple of people that I know in psych who killed it in the business game because they know how people think, they kind of know the psychology behind it, which makes sense. Then human resource management obviously lends itself very well to managing teams as well, or leading teams. So I think it was just really cool, really educational, and I think there was a lot of things to get out of this one.
Yeah, I think she also killed it in the technical side. Like, she said she's not the most technical person, but she did the SE role for a long time. Anyways, we've been blabbing for almost 7 minutes. I think everybody's tired of hearing us talk. This is Ramsey, along with Betty, signing off.